We were kind of running out of money. We had just set for our A-levels, hadn't done too well. All of a sudden, someone's like, we don't really care about the views. We'll pay you to create the content. I made a lot of mistakes building the business. I was studying to be a doctor, not to do any of this. So some people don't take no for an answer. Like even for me, the first time they offered to buy majority, I told them to go pound sand.
Hello and welcome to the final episode of Founding Minds of ILLUMINATE 2024 by the IEEE student branch of IIT. I'm Sananda Kannangar. Today we have a very special guest with us who is a self-taught entrepreneur who's just started his career by posting content on his YouTube account and then moved to building multiple multi-million-dollar businesses. He was listed under the Forbes 30 Under 30 of Asia in 2021. He's none other than Mr. Bhanuka Harischandra, who's the CEO and founder of Search Global. So Bhanuka, how's your day so far?
Pretty good. Thank you so much for having me, Ashu. It's a wonderful opportunity.
So in your opinion, like who's Bhanuka Harischandra and what's your background?
Bhanuka is really just I would just consider myself somewhat of a curious individual. I tend to follow things that are interesting to me and I tend to dabble, and it has, as a byproduct of it, created a bunch of businesses that has done quite well. In terms of my background, most of the work that I've done is somewhat self-learned. It's a combination of a series of problems that I have tend to have found myself. And then in the process of uncovering the solution to those problems, there's always been hey, other people should have similar issues as well. And then a journey of trying to commercialize those problems. To me, that's kind of how I see myself.
So it was mentioned like you started your career by streaming, playing online video games.
It wasn't streaming because back then we didn't have internet connection strong enough to stream. If you know how kind of SLT works, it's not great. So I used to, it was a funny story. I used to play this video game called Ninja Saga. Ninja Saga was this rip-off of Naruto that was on Facebook. And it was really funny because they had just launched in-game items. You pay real money and you buy an item in the game, and they had released this one knife or one sword per se. This sword had no kind of merit in the game. It wasn't stronger, but you had to pay real money to get it. So everyone was making fun of that specific item. It was $20 US, which was a lot of money. So I decided to buy one. I kept on nagging my mom again and again and again until she said fine, and I saved up money and we got that item. Everyone was making fun of it, and the reason I wanted to get that item was I wanted to get a video of that item just to do a little bit of a review. Now, funny thing about this is, even though it was a silly game, it had a very large player base. And about 15 million people were playing that game on Facebook at the time. As a result, the video of that item got a couple 100,000 views, which generated a few $100s in revenue. And I had that moment where I went, oh, wait a second. I can just keep buying all these different items and then making content around that, because the revenue from the video outweighs the cost of the item. So that little arbitrage is how we got started.
And how did it turn up to building such business empires, like going on forward, multi-million-dollar businesses?
I wouldn't call it an empire. I think we've built a pretty decent company here. So the story was that once we realized that there was an opportunity, we kept on replicating this at as many versions of it as possible. We would do tutorials and reviews of kind of every niche game that we could get our hands on. We started a brand called TheGamersCottage. At one point, we were doing review of level 632 on Candy Crush, how to complete it, right? And at one point, we had collected a series of content creators, acted as a multi-channel network for them, and worked revenue share agreements with those creators. So I was doing my A-levels at the time, and we had I think at our peak, we were doing about 60 million views a month across all the channels, all across all the views that we were monetizing. It's not a lot of money, but it started to generate some returns. And it was me and one other friend of mine at the time. We were kind of spending every day recording these videos. At one point, so the partnership we had was through another MCN called Freedom. They were a pretty large multi-channel network at the time, and YouTube changed its policy saying that networks weren't allowed to sub-license the product, so we could no longer monetize any of the content we had. So we went from having a team and a business to somewhat not having a business overnight. The opportunity that we saw was when a couple months later, we were kind of running out of money. We had just sat for our A levels, hadn't done too well, and we obviously didn't want to tell our parents this happened because they were like, I told you the internet is a fad, you're wasting your time. So we kept on pushing the conversation back and back and back. And we actually got reached out by this one firm that knew us on the video game space, and it's a magazine in Sri Lanka. They said, hey, you guys are doing this interesting thing with YouTube. Can you help us launch a YouTube channel? I didn't really understand what that meant because all this time we were getting paid based on the number of views we got. And all of a sudden, someone's like, we don't really care about the views. We'll pay you to create the content. And we had a little bit of a light bulb moment, and we decided we wanted to be a YouTube content creation company for businesses. And that's how Surge really started. Just like you guys, I was running around with a camera and some video recording gear, trying to sell the concept of get your YouTube channel started if you're a business to all these businesses in Sri Lanka. These were small cafes, magazines, anyone who would listen really. And we essentially started being a YouTube services company. I got along with the founders and the CEOs of those businesses, and every time they would have a problem that related to technology, they just assumed we would know. So they'd go, oh, can you help us build our website? Oh, what is SEO? You're doing our YouTube. Can you help us run ads on Facebook? And it was oh yeah, absolutely. And then we'd go home and learn how to do it and sell it back to them. So it was that cycle that went again and again and again. So the YouTube services company eventually became a social media agency, which eventually became a digital marketing company. The websites became more and more complicated. We had to teach ourselves how to code. The marketing firm became a technology business. And, 10 years later, that's what we have here today.
Great. So you said you didn't do much into your school and early days. So how hard was it, like, I mean, not having the knowledge in marketing, like getting the recognition in the industry in those early days?
I think if I had followed a conventional education, I would have also probably, so there's pros and cons to this, right? I made a lot of mistakes building the business, and some of those could have been easily avoided by following the traditional track, which is learn how to do these things, get a better understanding of finance, understand commercialization better, not put yourself in compromising situations. I would have probably saved a lot of time and energy have I had gone through that process. But at the same time, I think if I had waited to go through the traditional route, one, I would have not gone through the academic route that I would have wanted to. I was studying to be a doctor, not to do any of this. And two, I think I was super early on. Like I had started when I was 60. So by the time my friends had graduated and started entering the workforce, we had a team and somewhat of a business running. So I think there's both sides to it. I like the approach of kind of taking a stab at it, slowly building it through, rather than being very clinical about the process. So I think recognition-wise in the industry, I don't think people really care too much about your qualification as long as the output of the product is credible. Unless you are like a doctor or an engineer that's responsible for people's lives in the types of work that we do, from computer science to all of these things. I think if your work can speak for itself, and it would be less so the pieces of paper that say you can. Not saying that the pieces of paper aren't important. I think fundamentally, kind of, it does boil down to, do you have a stack of proof that can validate that you can do what you say you can do?
And what we see is like talking about traditional education, like what was told to us when we were young was like you need to get the leaving certificates, the character certificates.
I mean, I still don't have
Yes.
those, right?
It's never been checked anywhere.
And no one really asks you to say, hey, look, we can't work with you because your school doesn't recognize you as XYZ
Yep.
person.
Yes. So you had some mentors along the way.
Yes.
So how do you think how important it is for a startup to have a mentor when they are going to the industry?
I was fortunate in finding a few people that had some sort of liking to me, that said, "Oh yeah, I'm willing to work with you." I don't think it's necessary, but it sure helps. And to me, it has been a series of people, and those people have changed over time. Um, when I started the YouTube kind of network, we had someone named George Vanus that I met online. He ended up launching his company, selling it to broadband TV. He was helping us from an advisory point of view. Nothing formal, nothing structured. Occasionally, when I'd have questions, I'd text to him and he'd respond. People like Mangala in industry, that he runs a company called Calci. He was actually one of the first few people that told me I should stop pursuing education and do this. There was an event in 2012, 2013 called Jaffna IT Week. Just like you guys, I had gone over there working for that company and we were interviewing him. And that's how I met the guy. And he eventually said, I think there's an interview, you could probably take a snippet out of it on Simple Books, where he describes that interaction of, our story, how we met, why he decided to mentor me. Because most time, like today, I get tons of people asking, hey, can you help me out? And unfortunately, the answer is no, just not because I don't want to, it's because there's only so much time in the day. Even when you guys ask to the podcast, like there's a default answer that I give is, hey, look, I really appreciate it, but I'm happy to do, like, be guest number 10 or 11. Because at that point, I know you guys are actually committed to doing it and it's not just like a one-off thing. After Mangala, I had a group of people, Haley Evans, Shahan from Tavistock. They've all been wonderful mentors to me. And as you grow through your career, you'll realize kind of the people that you get help from, advice from, change. Today, people, even like people like Bhanuka Harischandra, super supportive. You drop them a text, they respond. And I think I've been fortunate to somewhat stand on the shoulders of giants, but that has also come from asking for that and following through with the advice that they give and them seeing that there's progress. It helps. It's funny, I was talking with Mangala a couple of weeks ago. Today, when we look at the two businesses, we're actually a large organization, both in terms of like number of people, revenue, and it's just a really cool thing back, and we've become friends over the years. He's one of our investors as well. So I think it's been helpful. It's difficult for you because you also need to find someone that you like and that they also need to like you. So it's a tricky relationship, but if you can find something that fits, I think it's wonderful.
And always reaching out to advice helps.
It's a fine balance, right? Because you will piss people off. Because some people don't take no for an answer. Like even for me, some people are like, "Hey, can you do this, this, this?" And people also approach it with a sense of entitlement, assuming that, "Oh, I'm doing something. I expect you to
Yeah.
help." But it's tricky. So figuring out that balance is quite important.
And talking about now, you were listed in the Forbes 30 and the 30 list in 2021. So what do you think actually resulted in you getting that global level recognition?
I was nominated by someone. I that was a bit of a surreal experience. Uh, I was not expecting that nomination at all. We got reached out, me and a friend of mine actually called Udanja. Both of us got the same like we won the same year. Uh, they reached out. They said, "Hey, look, we're doing this thing," and it was not really to do with anything that we were doing with Surge. It was during the 2019 Easter attacks. We had launched a product called Watchdog, and the idea was at the time there was so much fake news going on, and there was no way to validate what was right and what was wrong. And we figured out there was a better way to do it. It wasn't complicated. It wasn't AI. It wasn't any of that. It was we had a group of people that would fact check information that comes our way to validate whether this is right or wrong. And we had built a small app that disseminates that information so everyone knows. I remember my mom and dad working in the so my mom's an oral and maxillofacial surgeon. She was doing a lot of work during that time with people, bomb blasts and everything. And then there was all these kind of fake threats going on. Or there's a bomb at the general hospital, and people would just send random things, and everyone would freak out because it's all WhatsApp messages that get circulated. So we wanted to kind of show the source of the message, say, is there any credibility to it, and to be able to disprove it. And that's, me, him, and a couple others got together at a coffee shop and decided, hey, let's kind of build this. And then 3 days later, we had built a product which I think was ranked number 1 on the App Store at the time. And I think the folk at Forbes found that really interesting. So I think it was a combination of the work that we did at Surge was more of a validation, but the real intrigue came from that product that was launched at the time. But I think the entire experience was ridiculous because they didn't give you a heads up. One day in the morning, you get an email saying, hey, you've been selected. Here's everything you need to know. Until then, you're basically in the dark.
So talking about global recognition, so we saw you been to Necker Islands a couple of times and meeting Richard Branson, who's the founder of Virgin Groups. So how did that happen?
Richard's relationship started through a mutual friend. We have a client of ours that runs a company in Australia called CEO Magazine. They're kind of a media and publishing business. And Chris Dutton, the founder of that business, started launching a dating app. He wanted to build a dating app called Hello Tiger, and Surge was the firm that was selected to essentially build that product. Chris and I became friends at the time, and 2 years ago, he basically, we had kind of started working, and he was liking the work that we were doing. He had been kind of screwed around by developers before, saying that they'd do something and then not being able to deliver. He was so happy, and one day we were on a call, and he said, hey, Bhanuka, I have this event that I host every year at Necker. We have one free seat. Do you want to come on board? I think it would have been stupid to say no. So I said yes. It was the most atrociously long flight I've seen. It was from Colombo to Doha, Doha to LA, LA to Texas, Texas to San Juan, Puerto Rico, San Juan, Puerto Rico to Beef Island, and then from Beef Island you jump on a boat and drive. It's like go an hour to Necker, like 2.5 days to get there. But man, it was incredible. And even like Richard was phenomenal, such a gracious host. He was with us the entire week. But even more than that, we were there together with 30 other kind of founders that have remarkable stories. People that one person that we met, she's a Netflix documentary about her. She was one of the mayors in Afghanistan during the war. We had friends that lost half their team from a Russian missile strike that headquartered in Ukraine. So you meet some really diverse people, and so that's an event that happens every year. So I went the year before last year, this year, and I'm most likely going to go in May as well. And Richard's been such a wonderful guy.
Yeah, he's obviously an intimidating character. So
Not really. I think first time, obviously, kind of because of his, who he is as an individual, he's incredibly kind of intimidating. But I mean, now, like, it's just great. Like, he's dude, right? And he's incredibly fit for his age. That to me was remarkable. But now, he randomly messages you on WhatsApp and stuff. And
Is
yeah,
there anything you learn from him?
yes, I think so I have, you know, my career, I've been fortunate enough to surround myself with incredibly remarkable people that have generated massive fortunes over the years. There's two demographics of those people because most of them are slightly older eh, demographically, and one group is incredibly fit, and then the other group is not. The one big takeaway from Richard is that there is diminishing returns in money. After a certain point, you get marginally richer, it doesn't affect you. But your quality of life degrades so quickly depending on how healthy you are as you age. Uh, I think that prioritization and balance is probably something that I was more concerned about and more focused around after Richard. So I think from that point of view, that's probably where I'd say is the single most important thing I learned from him.
Alright. So we saw recently that you were fundraising for a new venture named Scattered House. So what is it and why is such a turn for a specific industry?
So I think Surge has kind of, fundamentally, when you break down this company, it's a commodities business. We are in the process of selling time of people, but time and materials, and then we charge it from our clients. If you look at Sri Lanka, there's thousands of businesses, agencies, software development companies, and consultancy firms. So many of it. But not everyone understands how to take that and go after real customers, build relationships with enterprise organizations, win tenders with governments. It requires a level of positioning, packaging, understanding, and communicating value, which I think, unfortunately, for Sri Lanka, not a lot of people are good at. Even when you look at kind of the agriculture sector, 25% of our workforce works in agri, massive group of people. We are focused on a cost-based economy. If it costs us $1 to produce, we're happy to sell it to someone to $1.10. What we don't know is that the guy that's buying it at $1.10 sells it to someone else at $5. And we've taken the entirety of the risk at the dollar. The guy who's able to communicate value, understand market, positioning, brand, is taking that 1.1 and all the way to 5. And I think Sri Lanka's kind of missing out. I think I saw an opportunity to be able to solve that distribution issue because of kind of our core understanding in marketing. And I think it allows us to be able to solve a series of issues. I think from an industry point of view, agriculture needs help, and not from innovation and technology. There's other people doing that. I think from a brand and positioning point of view, I think it's incredibly important. And we help all these companies globally to do really cool stuff, but no one's doing anything here. So I figured it's worth taking a stab at it. So we set up a small team, started growing crops in Anuradhapura, in Patiklo, made a whole bunch of mistakes, lost a ton of money. And along the years, we learned how to do this in a slightly more sophisticated way. And we had a thesis that as time went on, we could crack more lucrative contracts, be able to build our own product line, and increase gross margins as we scale. And we are kind of realizing that thesis is working out. So we're raising a bit of money, doubling down, and seeing how far we can push it.
And one point that you mentioned is now businesses, companies that come in Sri Lanka does not know how to actually approach the customers. And that is something that we have seen with the startups that are coming up. They have brilliant ideas, but when going to the market, most of them actually fail. So why do you think is the main reason behind it, and how should they focus on bringing a product or a service to the market?
So I think there's two parts to that question. I think most reason that startups that go to market fail is because, the ones that succeed don't actually build a product and go to market. They have a customer before they build the product. Because if you aren't able to clearly identify a customer for the problem that you're solving, you shouldn't try to solve that problem. It's too difficult. You'll spend years and years understanding and learning how to communicate with that one person that you will most likely fail, which is why there's so many deaths in startups between 0 to 1 customers, right? Once you have your first customer, it's just a matter of can you figure out how to get from 1 to 10? And once you get to 10, it's super easy. I think fundamentally, when you look at everything from education in Sri Lanka, we are taught the technical aspects of the subject. We are taught why things are done the way they are. We are able to get very analytical with information. However, the world is not black and white. The world is unfortunately just a giant ball of gray. Being able to communicate with people and get an idea across in a way that both parties understand clearly is arguably the most important skill, which we just do not teach. So people that have some sort of a predisposition towards it tend to do better than others. And those that spend time learning how to do it tend to get ahead as well. Even if you look at kind of corporate life, right? The ones that do well aren't the best engineers, the best accountants, the best biologists, the best doctors. They're the ones that really understand their customer, understand their stakeholders, understand their management teams, and are able to communicate the ideas effectively. And I think that we just lack as a demographic. Right? Most people are too shy to talk. We don't like talking about anything. So we're a very introverted group of people. And
Especially in Sri Lanka.
yeah, and in a global economy, that's a bad place to be because you kind of need to be loud. There's so much noise about everything. If you're silent and you're waiting for other people to manage those conversations for you, I don't think it's going to work well for you.
And in your mind, what do you think is the most important element for customer growth?
What do you mean by customer growth?
Like when getting their first customer and moving on to getting their trust, building their trust?
I think, look, when you are a customer, product, or client partner, whatever relationship is, it's the interaction between a problem and a solution. The customer does not see you as a provider. They see you as a solution to an individual problem that they have. So if you are able to solve that problem well, you retain the customer. You need to define what the problem is. Is the problem a single instance? Is it a recurring problem? Is it a large problem in terms of financial size, or is it a tiny problem? Your ability to identify that problem will help you kind of put together the solution, and then as a result, the relationship is how well do you solve the problem. If it's solved super simply and inexpensively, the customer will love you. If you're the only one who knows how to solve it, but it's a pain in the ass to solve, and it's super expensive, they'll work with you. They may not love you as much, but I think the interaction between the two is the problem and the solution, and that trust is built through reliability and your ability to consistently deliver over time.
And how much do you think being transparent actually of what you do and the services that you provide affect to that?
I think so part of the reason that we're super transparent about everything from salaries to what we charge to what we do is because I think being in Sri Lanka, you have an inherent disadvantage. Most companies that we talk to does not know Sri Lanka is a country. So there's a lot of education that needs to happen to say, hey, look, we are this country that stays here. It's not India. We have great literacy rates. We know what we're doing. We have a group of people that is technically aligned. We've done kind of all of these things before. So it's a story and the narrative that you build over time that gets someone to trust you, whether it's with a service, whether it's when you're raising capital, for them to know that you have a track record. It helps.
And now, something we see with the startup founders is now they are some kind of reluctant to give out their shares, dilute their shares. So that is a challenge that you have taken multiple times.
Yeah, look, I think I don't want to do anything alone. I don't see the benefit in it because if your idea is good enough and it succeeds, you're all going to get rich anyway, right? So I don't necessarily see the benefit in the being the only person in that shareholder list that does well, especially when there's like so much to go around. I think the trickiest thing for me was with Surge because pretty early on we gave away 51%, right? In 2017, 2018, we gave 51% control to a company called Tavistock, private equity firm, pretty large, not private investment firm. Best decision we made, right? It forced us to mature as an organization. It forced us to run the business in a specific way. It gave us a lot more credibility when we spoke to our customers. Uh, and even today, for Scattered, we are raising money, not diluting to the point of majority, but we are diluting to the point where, eventually I'd like to own as little as possible of a massive business so that I am not the only person that's responsible for keeping it successful because you have so many shareholders, they're also working in your interest. So I almost see it as a kind of a greedy way so that I could take back some of my time and attention because other people are more invested in the success of that business than you are.
And like in the early days when you were giving the majority of Sturge away, like did you think twice, like before making that decision?
Well, the first time they offered to buy majority, I told them to go pound sand. The they were smart enough to go, yeah, that's totally fine. We'll not buy you guys out, but we'll work together. And the first project that we did together, I was, I think, 20 years old at the time. And yeah, so the first project that we did together with them, or 21 years old at the time, was with us, them, and one of their portfolio companies that had flown Bill Gates over for one of their farms in Australia. And I was on a call with the Gates Foundation to figure out their marketing strategy. And at that point, I was like, okay, I cannot recreate this room by myself, regardless of the situation. And then we ended up quoting for that piece of work, which was 5 times the price of what we would typically quote for half the effort. And so at that point, you kind of very quickly got an understanding of size, scale, opportunity. And it was a no-brainer after that to say, I'd rather own a larger piece, a smaller piece of a larger business than 100% of nothing. When they were looking at investing in us, we had been doing about $60,000 a year in revenue. Today, we are north of 200 times that. I think it worked out well.
And talking about money, so something we have seen is some startup founders, they are trying to make their business profitable straight away starting on. What's your take on that?
I think being profitable is the best thing you can do for a business because it prevents you from, kind of insulates you from everything, right? Because at the end of the day, if you can pay your team, keep the lights on, external things don't matter. Some businesses that require scale sometimes can't be profitable. For example, so Surge has almost always been profitable. When we raised money, we were profitable. Before that, we were profitable. On day one, we were profitable. Scattered requires a very large kind of leadership team, and year one, we'll probably lose $1 million. But that's okay. We have an understanding of how we are setting it up, what we're doing, how the outcomes will kind of stack over time. But if I could make it profitable, I would. Now, there's also an understanding of kind of definitions of profitable. I wouldn't scale a business that is not even gross profitable. Scattered may not be net profitable, but its gross margins are still great. right? I think those nuances are important, but as a business, eventually you do have to get to profitability, right? And it's tougher to be in businesses, or the story gets trickier and trickier once you kind of erode your margins, don't have any bottom line, and then you're selling the story of, hey, we have this really interesting set of data, or we're building this thing in the future. It's tougher to get investor buy-in. So my point of view that is that the more profitable the business is, the easier it is to grow.
Excellent. So we have a couple of personal questions as well. So do you maintain a work-life balance?
No,
Do you play video games?
I do. I don't think I would. I play League of Legends still mostly. Do you play?
Not much.
Okay. And I do play video games. I don't think I would say I make a spend like I have a good work-life balance, because I think realistically speaking, when you're young,
You have to give the time.
yeah, look, I think work-life balance is a sucker's game. I think it's a false narrative. I think if you want to get ahead, the benefit of compounding when you're young is ridiculous. And if you want to let go of that because you want a marginally better quality of life, sure. But I would rather kind of sacrifice my early years and then get a lot of, put the work up front and the life later, to be honest. I could be wrong. I could get hit by a bus tomorrow and then this entire thing's irrelevant. And then you go, ah, shit, you spent your entire time working. But I also enjoy the work I do. So yeah, I don't think I have good, I don't think it's terrible, but it's more on the side of work than
Manageable.
yeah.
And finally, like, what kind of an advice that you can give for these new founders or startups?
I think all of these advices are given in the form of different books and different people over the years. But really for you, look, if you're starting a business, understand a problem in the market, find someone who has it, offer them a solution, charge them for the solution, and you essentially have a business, right? Go out, try to sell something. Don't worry about failing. If you're failing, try to fail with like losing the least amount of money possible. And don't be afraid to make mistakes. Don't feel introverted putting something out on the internet. Your friends will ridicule you in the beginning. It's okay. It's a part of the process. Then continue doing that and repeat, learn from your mistakes, A/B test everything. Over time, you'll do fine.
And with that, we have reached the end of our session. And thank you, Bhanuka, for sharing your valuable insights and
It was
experience.
super fun. Thank you, everyone, for having us.
Subscribe to our channel for more interesting content like this. See you again.